I'm on my way to a speaking engagement and thought it might be a good idea to provide a short and condensed version of my story here. A lot of people are checking my page and might find it to be beneficial if it applies to their situation, and if not, you can just scroll on. Please excuse the elliptical, but I'm about to jump on there for a few minutes to stretch before I try to cram my long legs on the airplane seat for my flight. But what I'm speaking about today, I've been asked to share a bit about my experiences with parental alienation. It's been a profound factor in my story, and by sharing it can be helpful to those who are also trying to navigate similar situations. In my story, the very shortened version of it, I met my abuser when I was 19 and he was 30, which is a huge red flag. But I was just a baby and didn't realize that, though my family and even some of his family members tried to help me understand that I was in an unsafe situation. I saw the controlling nature and the jealousy and things of that sort to be signs that he really loved me. And it was what I was familiar with. I was familiar with a very controlling dynamic because that's what I had grown up with. And unfortunately, we tend to repeat those patterns until we learn and understand them better to be able to break them. So I'm often asked to come speak to those who are going through similar situations and trying to break similar patterns, and to provide solutions and ideas of how to help navigate some of the things that occur in these dynamics. In my situation, I had young babies. I had my children very close together, and my abuser we had landlines, phone lines at the time, and he would take the cord with him to work so that I wouldn't have access to a phone. I was very isolated. I wasn't allowed access to any rights of bank accounts or property. My name wasn't allowed to be on anything, and I wasn't allowed car keys so that I could ever leave. And in the event that I was allowed the car keys to take the kids to doctor's appointments, he would check the odometer before he left. And when he returned, to make sure I didn't go anywhere else besides where he had approved. It was a very controlled dynamic. I had to ask for allowance to be able to buy diapers and groceries. And it was very difficult to get out of that situation, but I was blessed with a means to do so, and thank goodness I did. I can't even imagine what my life would have been like if I would have stayed in that marriage, and who I would have been, because it was stripping away all my talents, my gifts, my self-esteem, the core of who I was. When you leave a situation like this, however, the abuse gets actually far worse, but in a different way. The need for power and control doesn't go away. And so the abuser will find means to control the victim, generally through the judicial system, legal system, through the community. And that's what happened in my case. Even though my abuser had been convicted of abusing me, it was a known fact that he had been abusive, and past partners confirmed that in their experiences. It was not a secret. He was really good at twisting the narrative or creating a brand new narrative of what really happened. And what generally occurs in these situations is the abuser will utilize the kids. That's their means of having access to knowledge about what the other parent's doing, whether he's questioning the kids, trying to hurt the other parent through the kids. So in my case, my kids were not allowed to call me mom when they were around him. They were required to refer to me by my first name. If they were on the phone with me during visits with their dad, the calls would be closely monitored, and the phone would be taken and hung up if they expressed any kind of love to me or told me they missed me. Any kind of positive emotion they expressed toward me, they would be disciplined for. So it became safer to not show love to me and to side with the parent with the perceived power, because that was part of their survival. Unfortunately, this tactic will travel into adulthood with those kids because the mental manipulation is so ingrained in them that they're so used to the narrative that that abusive parent has created that they start to question their own reality and don't even really know reality anymore at times. Oftentimes, these abusers will project their own behaviors onto their victims. So if they were violent, they'll accuse their victim of being violent. If they have substance issues, they'll accuse their victim of that. If they have a mental health disorder, they'll accuse their victim of that. It's very common for these abusers to also utilize community members, coaches, teachers, doctors to further alienate the victim from the children. In my case, my abuser would meet with coaches, would meet with teachers before I ever met them, and tell a story, a narrative that would paint me in a false light so that there was already an existing bias before they ever even met me. And the kids certainly aren't going to counter what the abusive parent says. They're going to go along with that narrative for their own safety. So it definitely created a wedge between me and my children. And these abusers will use the judicial system, who unfortunately in some communities lack really direly needed training in this area. My abuser filed modification year after year after year and kept me fighting for my children for years. I was faulted by a judge for being kind to my abuser, that it was unlikely that I had fear of him because I was kind to him, not understanding the dynamics of a power and control relationship where I was trying to navigate and survive co-parenting with somebody of this dynamic. So I really have learned through these experiences the power of the gray rock technique. And this is a tactic or tool that can be used by those going through similar situations. Ultimately, the abuser is seeking a reaction, whether it's good or bad. It allows them to feel like they're still in control of the victim if they can get a reaction out of them. This is also referred to as reactive abuse, where an abuser will poke and prod and antagonize the victim to the point where they just can't take it anymore. And then when the victim responds or reacts, the abuser will say, "See, look, they're crazy. Look at them." And this is a very common tactic that is used. Another tactic that is used besides projecting their own behaviors onto the victim is triangulation. These abusers are very good at keeping their hands clean and hiding behind the scenes, and they will utilize third parties by painting themselves as the victim and getting people to feel sorry for them. And they'll get community members, even the victim's own family members, their support system, to become part of this campaign, this smear campaign of their victim, this campaign of false information. And what'll happen is people will think they're doing the right thing and helping protect these children from this evil parent, when in actuality what is happening is they're supporting an abuser in damaging a healthy parent-child bond and alienating that parent from that child. And it's unfortunate because many people will hear only one side of the story and run with it and get themselves involved in situations they really have no business being involved in. And this confirms to the kids an even greater depth to the alienation, because now not only do they have a parent who is discouraging them from loving their only other parent, but also an entire community, to where they don't even feel safe to say, "Yeah, I love my mom. I'd love to see my mom. I want my mom at my sporting events." But it becomes safer because an entire group of extended family and coaches, teachers, piano teachers, doctors, whoever they've managed to manipulate, are doing the right thing and protecting this child from the other parent, not understanding anything about the story, history, the criminal convictions, none of it. So I hope that my story can really be beneficial to others. It hasn't been easy by any means, but it's allowed me some skills that really can help others navigate, or at least soften the blow and help them understand that there's going to be attacks. When you leave an abusive relationship, they don't want you to have a career. They don't want you to have another relationship or marriage. They don't want you to go to school. All these things will become something that will be attacked probably for the remainder of your life. I'm going on a couple decades now. You know, when I would try to go to college classes, my papers would mysteriously get ripped up, or my car would become disconnected so I couldn't go to class. My employers are frequently contacted about me. There's just numerous efforts to sabotage a future, because that abuser never wants the victim to succeed without them, because then they're not in control. I know that when I remarried, my abuser threatened both of us and said, I'll take your car, I'll take your house, I'll take your kids. You'll never have anything when I'm done with you. And made that his life mission to fulfill that. So I hope that my painful and difficult experiences can shed some light on some issues that require some much needed training in our communities, in our judicial system especially, and can offer support to anyone who may be going through these difficult circumstances as well.